So, chapter 14. Getting into the brain, cranial nerves. And when we move into this channel, into this chapter, I am always amazed at the brain. Anybody who goes into neuro anything, okay, gets my utmost respect, because this is a difficult part of the body to understand, and it's constantly changing because we're finding out information all the time. So when we look at this area of the body, well, the brain, of course, part of the central nervous system, trillions of synapses going on, all right? Trillions. I mean, don't even have a clue as to how much. But there are some terms that come along with this area. And when you look at some of the terms, you may hear rostral and caudal. Rostral is going to be letting you know that they're referring to the area towards the forehead. Well, whenever I hear the term caudal, I think of a caudal tail, okay? So to the back, all right? Now, the brain is going to weigh a little bit different in men and women. We know that it has definitely changed over the geological time scale, because if we look over the geological time scale, we have seen the change of man, okay, to the point where walking, you know, on all fours to where we're now bipedal, okay. Problem is now we're pretty much devolving. We're no longer evolving. That's the sad part. And so, you know, we have seen the change in the shape of the head over time. So we know that it has changed. When we look at some of the markings that are on the brain, once again, a lot of times when we hear that term, this is the area that we're thinking about. But this is our cerebrum, cerebellum, brainstem, leading into the spinal cord. But there are some major markings on the brain. For example, this really deep groove. There's one on each side, and that, if it's on the side, what direction is that? Lateral. Pick it up, look at it, take it apart.
She read it first. She's not great. I just can't wait to take out my daily. It's like there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a little nut at the bottom. Tab right there,
So if we look on each side, because that's what lateral means, you can see there's a very prominent groove that's existing All right, it's on each side. So we're going to term that a lateral sulcus. Do you remember that term from part 1? Okay, deep groove, all right, for the sulcus. Now, if you look at, still on the side, all right, do you kind of see a very prominent, another prominent line? Okay, and it's on each side. This is your central sulcus. Now, do you see it? That's going to become important to us. All right? So make sure you note that really deep line on each side. It looks like it almost connects across the 2 hemispheres on the top. Yes, right through here. And then over. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. See that? Now, all the folding, all this folding, okay? These are our gyri. Rostral, caudal. Okay? Very prominent features that are present. And they would be very prominent when you look at a brain, which we'll do if we have any. I'll have to check in the fridge. Now, I know, right? It's like, what? Now, we're going to see that there are some major portions to the brain. Our cerebrum, cerebellum, brainstem. The cerebrum, the great big huge part, the majority of the brain, okay? And yeah, I'll give it kudos. There's a lot going on up there, all right? But when you begin to look at what is going to run the body, the homeostasis of the body, we're looking at the area right here of our brainstem. And then this region right here, where we're going to find something called the hypothalamus, which is going to run the pituitary gland. Trust me on this. It is so cool.
Can you repeat the name?
The hypothalamus.
The hypothalamus.
Hypothalamus. And the pituitary gland. And then we have our cerebellum. The cerebellum, a lot of what you're going to find in the cerebellum is a lot of it will deal with our ability for posture, maintaining upright. There's some other things that go on down in the cerebellum. But when we talk about our thinking, our memory, our ability to read, speak, write, these are going to be areas within the cerebrum. They're going to be areas that have developed over time, and this is why we refer to the cerebrum as our higher order thinking region. The other parts, the brainstem, the cerebellum, those are more primitive. All right? Basically what it's taking to keep us alive. Now, when we look at the brain, there are 2 halves. We have the left and we have the right. When we look at the division between them, it's very prominent. And this is our longitudinal fissure. Fissure means like this break that is present. So we have the longitudinal fissure. When we begin to look, we've got the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal would be back over here, okay? Once again, representing the central sulcus. Like I said, this is going to come back to bite us, because here's what we're going to find. We're going to have a prefrontal cortex, all right, and we're going to have these two gyri right here. They're going to be very responsible for helping coordinate actions on the areas of our body, like movements of our hands, feet, sensations, that sort of thing. So we're going to come back to that. Now, one of the things that's present when you look at the two halves of the brain and you do this number, all right, they're representing the corpus callosum by this like white C-shaped ring that's present, and it's going to be a very thick bundle, okay, of fibers, and it's going to be connecting the left and the right hemisphere. Now, a lot of times we'll hear something like, okay, well, I'm left-brained or I'm right-brained, something to that effect. And the reason for that is because we do tend to have things cross over. All right, that does tend to happen. Now, the cerebellum, like I said, at the posterior end, it also has gyri, sulci, and fissures. They're just shaped differently. See how it looks like a bunch of lines? And there are two halves, left and right, okay? It's just that all of the enfoldings and the gyri, it looks like they're flattened now. Okay, but you can still see that they're trying to represent some, prominent lines in it. Okay, so there's your cerebellum. Now look at this part. The cerebellum, it's only about 10% of the makeup of this structure. But look at this. It has over 50%. Now, that's probably something you wouldn't associate if you look at the cerebrum versus the cerebellum. You probably wouldn't think about, wow, over 50% of the neurons are here. The neurons are kind of special in this area. And based on what this area is going to do, all right, is the reason that we've got so many neurons. Believe it or not, even though there are trillions for higher order thinking, don't need as many. Go figure, right? Think you would need a little bit more. But we don't really use all that we have anyway. If we were to take the cerebrum and the cerebellum away, only thing that would be left is the brain stem. This part of the brain is amazing. Now, any damage done to this area of the brain usually is going to result in death, because this area of the brain is responsible for the normal body functions, the part that's maintaining homeostasis. Now, my major components. Y'all have probably heard of midbrain pons medulla oblongata, right? Mama says, you know. Some of y'all know Waterboy. Okay, so it's sad that a lot of my knowledge comes from movies, just saying. So, have you ever heard of the diencephalon as being part of it? This is going to be the area that has your hypothalamus?
Brainstem.
The diencephalon, it's going to be the area that has your hypothalamus.